ultimately you pay what you owe. You pay what you borrowed.
No.
You borrowed that.
It's just like almost reparations when they say, if we give these people money, what are they gonna do with the money? That's not your job to figure out what they do with the money.
I'm looking at it from not necessarily from my perspective, but looking at it for the kids, for students.
Let's say after 5 years, you make it $75,000 less, you get that forgiven.
Like, if you make $75,000, that's trash. It's nothing.
Hey there, podcast and not family, favorite podcast of Lamar here. And we got tonight a special drink. It's called On the Rocks Premium Cocktail. For these, the good thing about this is all you need to do is add ice. So if you don't feel like actually making a mix or figuring out what to mix with your drink, just add some ice and you're good to go. So we're going to take a shot of it right now and see what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Pause.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And again, that was a mix, so that's pretty good. But what we do is we give our drinks a rating, 1 out of 10. 1 meaning it was straight trash, and 10 meaning it was absolute fire. So we're going to go around now. What rating do you give this? And keep in mind, it is a mix already, so.
You want to go first?
I mean,
It does taste good with the mix.
yeah.
By itself, it would probably be just another tequila shot.
I think it's all right by
What would you
itself,
give it,
man.
1 out of 10?
Give it a 7, man, by itself.
Yeah, by
like
itself.
you don't need nothing to go with that. You know,
The mix for me, I would say, because it's mixed, I would give it an 8. What was it called again?
It's called On the Rocks.
Yeah.
So it's already
and,
mixed.
and you're right with that one up rating is perfect, man.
Yeah.
7 without.
So I'll give it an 8 because, like I said, it's already mixed and it's good. So realistically, all you need is add ice. All right, we want you guys to be a part of it too. So if you have a favorite liquor or a drink that you want us to try, just let us know. Send us an email at fcast752@gmail.com or hit us up on one of our social medias, either Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and let us know what to try next. Thank you, guys.
Yes, and for businesses, we are trying to work with you. So, for example, this liquor store that we got this from, we definitely like to promote businesses. So, this one will go unnamed for now,
We're not going to do a shout out to them.
unless you'd like to.
Shout out to Slims and Harry in Oakdale.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Shout out.
as we come to your liquor store and we have some brands in which we want to showcase, we definitely want to showcase your store in particular. So, please, let's work together. Student loan forgiveness?
Yeah, so everybody, there's definitely a topic that we want to hit before we move on to the balance of the day or the topics for the balance of the day. Student loans, hot topic. I want to get each of your opinions on...
Biden overlooked me.
Me too.
He what?
He overlooked me.
Me too.
A lot of my student loans should be forgiven because it's a Dowling College, which no longer has its accreditation. So I feel like even when I do the interviews, they're like, Dowling College, it's not popping up. I'm like, yeah, it's no longer around anymore.
It's tough to explain.
Still put on my resume.
But when we graduated, it was accredited, so we do still get credit for that.
Yeah, I feel like it should be forgiven, A, and then B, it shouldn't just be federal forgiveness. There's a lot of private. At least if you can't forgive the private side, I'm speaking for Biden right now. If you can't forgive the private side, at least like a stipend or a quota that you have to make, like we'll fill out application if you make less than a certain amount and you had these student loans for X amount of time, even put a GPA in it.
What's your threshold? What's the cap? How much income?
How much income? The general, like less than 75,000 or 80,000 or something like that. I'm looking at it from not necessarily from my perspective, but looking at it for the kids, for students. They're coming out of college with some of these private student loans, not making the money that they thought they would make. And they're giving it to private institutions versus the actual federal government.
So what if Biden says, I'm going to forgive everybody's student loans, but only those who make 70,000 and less, and if you might make above 70,000, not forgiven?
I think he's being biased.
But you just said Biden.
It's almost like
I negatively impacted
I would be happy for the students because that's kids.
Yeah,
so
but-
I would be happy for them. I wouldn't be happy for myself.
Yeah, but damn.
But-
you just
I know.
You just said something that went right back.
I mean, I agree.
It's like the catch-22. You want to do good and have the students have the best foot forward after college and not be in debt. But I'm years out of college now. So I still feel like I should have the opportunity to either A, get my shit forgiven, or B, there should be an asterisk if your college is no longer around. They lost their accreditation.
Jay's basically saying, I put in my time. I'm an old timer. I pay my dues.
I pay my taxes.
I pay my dues. Give me mine. All right,
and if you're a business owner, I feel like,
I get it.
Something.
Will, how do you feel about student loan forgiveness?
I'm gonna go based off the last question you guys kind of sort of asked Jay. And I feel like when you live in one of the top 10 most racist and segregated places in the world, like if you make $75,000, that's trash. It's nothing. So
you should get it forgiven.
When you're not forgiven, you're still struggling. I had people who call me recently like, yo, Will, I make $80,000 and it's so hard. And they're not even paying student loans. So just imagine someone who has to do that. And I understand, like, what was it that we got recently? The Trump era. And,
the stimmies?
Yeah, and if you made a certain amount, this, that, and the third, like I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was with the people who made a lot of money. I was like, they don't deserve nothing. You know what I mean? But now that I'm almost at that bracket or above the bracket,
shit hitting different.
At times it's hard. I'm like, nah.
You have student loans? Right,
I got tons of student loans,
and it's on federal and private side?
Bro.
Yeah.
I had these people reach out to me like,
they be calling.
Hey, Will, like Biden just did this. And I'm not going to lie, I was confused because there's like, if you do this and do that, within a few years, you'll be able to be forgiven. I'm like, wait, there's stuff I got to do in order to be forgiven?
You got to be careful with some of those phone calls.
Yeah. Like, so Nelson was like, nah, Will. Tell them, like, decline it. Do it yourself.
Yeah,
you remember that phone call we had, bro?
The scammers.
Yeah, not all of them.
Yeah.
They'll say some shit. Oh, yeah, this passed from the federal government. And then you read the fine print. We're not affiliated with the federal government at all. And
but where we live, bro, it's kind of, it's tough, man. Like, the cost of living
especially
is very expensive in Long Island, man.
Yeah, it is.
And any little thing that can help us, like, just make it to the next day.
Yeah.
Most of us, with the exception of a few people, we're living to survive.
Yeah.
So that's just my thoughts, man.
Yeah, student loan forgiveness.
How do you feel? Student loan forgiveness.
I agree with Jay, but I'll put it on a time frame thing. So let's say after 5 years, for the private sector anyways, let's say after 5 years, you make a $75,000 less, you get that forgiven. After 10 years, you're still not making, let's say you're making over 75 at that point, but after 10 years, you're still not making 110,000, then you get that shit forgiven.
I think it should be that. I think it should also be, if you made, at the very least, interest payments or some kind of payments.
I mean, so.
It should be
And also, just so you know, that federal thing, it doesn't apply to all federal loans. I found out the worst way about that.
What do you mean
shit.
doesn't apply for federal loans?
There was a 10-year rule, right? So
I wonder where he gets
certain federal loans, if you work in a federal job, and after 10 years, if you're making the interest payments, you'll get it forgiven.
Okay.
But then when you do your research, it doesn't apply to all federal student loans.
What's the
Which
difference?
one doesn't
Only a certain name, so
certain types of
the actual
loans?
name of the federal loan,
You must really do research, sir.
Yes.
I'm surprised. Like,
Yeah.
Wait, so your opinion is forgive student loans, but with certain...
For certain income levels, yeah. For me anyway, my experience was when I went to college, I actually wanted to do accounting, and then I was like, I want to do accounting, so I just want to be on an accounting course. She was like, well, you should really do finance because it's basically the same thing, but they make more money.
It's broader.
Yeah, so I was like, cool, I'll do finance then. And then when I graduated, I realized, no, you need all those accounting classes now, like for things I'm trying to pursue.
Unfortunately, you know what's crazy?
I was like,
you're not a CPA?
But you know what the worst thing about that whole situation is? This is why they went bankrupt.
Yeah,
they was giving bad advice.
Bro, I was so sick because I'm applying for jobs. They be like, you need this much credit in accounting. Oh, you substitute finance classes? No, you need it.
And I kind of
down podcast.
I kind of want to add to what Lamar said, but I don't know if he's going to agree to disagree. You said depending on how much they make, right? I would go even further because someone can make a certain amount, but you may not know what that person is going through. Like the world can just be a mess for them. Like sometimes in certain communities, there's a cycle of debt that just keeps cycling. Like you can get raises, and if you have so much stuff going on in your life,
But you have to quantify it.
But you can't. But you can't make a legislation or a law based on individuals.
The
Correct. You have to
education.
quantify it.
So
you can say it depends.
that's why I brought that up, because
Well,
if you're
your
going to
parameters.
say that, then you never know what someone's going through.
Yeah,
And
but
if you set, let's say the threshold's at 75, right? And people at 80 are suffering, going through the worst, and they're like, "What about us?
Wait,
we have all this going on in our lives."
So okay,
But they have to cut up at some
There
point.
has to be a parameter around it. So
I
if
get
you're
it.
saying
I
it's
get it.
80,000, no, just
I'm saying we
gonna
need
go
to do a
on-
little bit more research.
But they
I mean,
can't,
that's
they can't
just-
individualize. So let's say
You
to
said the
use your
limit
example,
different.
let's say
Little more
8,000, they have
research.
more stuff going on. Do you mean like an example?
Like
let's
kids
say
or
dependents or something like
marriage
that. What kind of situation would you say?
all that,
they
I feel like
qualify?
all that plays a role.
But then you
True,
just
but
a
they
matter
can't-
of
because someone,
Yeah.
then they just
someone-
matter of
that's
setting the
not
level,
someone-
different levels. Then
Yeah.
but
tiered
my
system.
thing
Yeah,
is,
different
like,
tier
let's say that it stops at 75,000. Let's say they got 10 kids.
Yeah.
They can't afford it, bro. And I'm pretty sure there's like more than one person out there today with
Yeah.
more than 5 kids.
Yeah.
Of course, taxes come, but you don't know what they're going through.
I know, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, you got to set the limit at some point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right,
So
and
let's
you
make that a
can't-
little higher then. I want to know. I want to
then-
know your
then-
limit then.
Then that's what you set it at.
You
set
said
it at a
110. What
I
you
mean,
think?
I would
No,
just
I
throw
would-
a number out.
I would
80.
throw. I would
And
throw.
we're talking about Long Island. Let's pick
I would
a
throw the
number.
same-
But you got to remember,
number.
you can't just pick.
No.
You can't just
pick a
pick Long
random-
It
Island.
can't be arbitrary.
I would throw the
yeah.
same number they have in place right now for student loans. For the federal forgiveness, I think it's 75, right? Or 80, something like that.
Sure.
Bro, in Long Island,
I would keep
though,
it the same.
But in Long Island,
But you gotta
it's
realize,
tough,
like,
I
bro.
understand that though.
It's
but-
a federal thing, so you can't just be like, oh, just Long
You
Island.
can't do regional
Because then it'd
I
be
get it, I
then
get
it
it, I
then
get
it
it.
becomes
We're
a
talking about
state thing.
federal government,
you
not
can
state
you can
government.
add clauses like if they have kids and dependency.
So,
like,
so
I
that,
think that's where I'm trying to go.
yeah,
but Lamar was saying
go
a tiered system. You can come up with a tier system to
Yeah.
correct. It's like you're giving somebody a handicap if they need the
Yeah.
handicap.
correct. And then maybe if they made payments.
I'm going to give a viewpoint that's it's in line more or less with what you guys say, but it's going to be very different.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ooh.
So my viewpoint is, yes, they should be forgiven, but the
niggas
way in
gonna
which
pay.
they should be we all gonna pay. So the way it
'cause
should
go
be
through the
forgiven
taxes.
is not that it's suddenly like the shit just gets wiped out.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't learn nothing from
Yeah.
somebody just wiping something out.
Okay.
You're gonna have to earn the wipeout. So how? The way you would do it is for every dollar you pay, the government pays $1.
Okay.
Or
Sort of like a match thing.
a match. Or instead of charging you interest, you pay all the principal. There is no interest on these student
Just the
loans.
principle.
Just straight principal.
I
Why? Because
understand.
like in your example, you were saying, I'm tight. I've been out of college 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Cool. By now, you would have paid them off if you hadn't had to pay interest.
True.
So let's just pay them off by you paying your principal only. There's no interest anymore.
But that's not.
But wait,
But
Jay,
not
Jay,
everyone is
let
in
me.
a situation where,
I
like
get
you
it, but
said, that they
Jay,
can-
but this is why you pay your fair share. Ultimately, you pay what you owe. You pay what you borrowed.
Yeah.
You borrowed that. No one
Yeah.
forced you to borrow.
I guess
it.
on the private side, it should be a little bit more clauses than on the federal.
Well, I'm
It
just
should
saying,
be-
there's a number of options. All those options I gave are not. You don't have to pick just one of them.
I like
honestly,
doubling, though.
But like, hey, either one. But either one, the government doesn't just have to wipe it away. By now, I bet you, here, you guys have probably paid your student loans a portion or in
Yeah.
full. If they had just paid it straight to the principal, you would have no student loans.
Very true.
Or they could literally match.
Yeah.
The government can
That's a
afford
good
to
idea.
match because then
On
they're
the
not going to pay
private
the
side,
full.
they won't forgive it.
Because if you think about it, the
It's still a
biggest issue
business.
that people have right now is that you're going to forgive $1.4 trillion.
Yeah.
Cool, let's make it $750 million.
Yeah.
The government eats half. The person has to pay half.
Mm.
It's an incentive.
Mm.
There's like that. Those are two options. There are
Better,
other ways
yeah.
to do it.
Yeah,
but I'm
that-
just saying.
that sounds like
I
the
do
option.
agree with. First of all, I do agree. They got to be forgiven somehow.
Yeah.
The way we forgive them, maybe different creative ways. Because for every person, to your point, everyone's situation is different. Maybe one person is zero interest. Maybe another person is the matching. Maybe it's zero interest and matching. Maybe it's some other
Like if the
combination.
college is no longer around.
Well, for the other,
Allen College.
well, what you're saying is, in a way, that could be a factor. A fourth way could be the school. If you don't have the outcomes, that school's got to eat the student loan,
I like that too.
right?
But they
If
found-
on average, after a certain number of years, the student is not earning what they were expected to earn,
Yeah.
you're eating the cost.
Yeah.
You're paying it back on their behalf.
I like it.
I kind of got a question for you, Nelson.
Yeah.
And I definitely see where you're going.
Mm.
And I kind of want to throw this out there,
Yeah.
like, cause I think I could be wrong, but I feel like you're taking a stance on, like, if you borrowed it,
Yeah.
then like there's a responsibility. You got to be man enough. If you can go out there and borrow it, then at some point you got to be responsible to pay it back.
Yeah.
Right. And I just want to add in, right, situations and circumstances. Like, let's say it's someone's last year and they just couldn't afford it, and they really don't want to borrow the money, but they kind of forced to because they just want to finish.
Yeah.
I see the face, Jay. But I'm just thinking
I'm with you, but I disagree in a sense with Nelson a little bit too, because keep in mind when they're borrowing it, they're like 16 years old, 15 years old.
I totally
and sometimes even older. Like they trying to go back to school because when they were younger, they couldn't afford it to finish. You know what I mean?
And even when they go back.
Think about it this way. What you guys are basically talking about is like usury or being taken advantage. It's like the payday loan, right? 5-10 years ago, people knew payday loans were terrible, but yet the laws didn't catch up with the payday loans, right?
A lot of people do.
I understand what you guys are saying, but we can't remedy the situation that happened 10 years ago today in a simple fashion, right? Because the laws may have finally caught up. I get it, and it doesn't feel great. Everyone's biting the bullet. How? Right? Because even if I'm saying forgive half means I'm still biting the bullet because I'm still paying the taxes for that.
You sound like someone who paid off their student loan.
Well, think about it.
And he took the sip after.
That's a simple way to dismiss what I'm saying, right?
I'm not dismissing.
But think about it. It's a veiled dismissal, right? Because I could just simply say
dismissal.
I don't agree with any dismissal. I actually could say that, but I don't. I actually believe everyone's owed a dismissal. I believe that people being taken advantage of. People literally.
There's countries where you don't pay.
I actually do believe that there's a right that needs to be. There's a wrong that needs to be
tax the rich.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you it's enablement, right? If you give someone the belief that they can make all these terrible mistakes at a certain point in their life, and if they haven't learned from those mistakes, they're just going to repeat the mistakes in a different way. They're going to divert the mistakes.
But then I don't necessarily agree
because we're not trying to teach people.
As far as because they were inbred in believing that they need to finish college.
But also
later on. So
a lot of times when you take these loans out, you're not really told, but you're kind of told.
Sometimes you're forced.
No, not even forced, but sometimes you're told that once you get this education, you're going to be making this much money and you can afford to pay it off no problem. And a lot of times after the situation is over with, you're not making what they told you to make. Because like I went in, so like when I went in and they told me you could do finance over account, it was like, they kind of gave me a chart, like account made like the first few years between 40 and 70, but finance was like, or show me. Yeah, they showed me like some chart.
And they set you up.
And they like, so there was like account, if I remember correctly, account was like 40 to 70 the first 3 years, but finance was like 60 to 100, something like that. And I was like, all right, cool. That's why I did that. And then you took out loans thinking, yo, if I graduate, I'm making that much, I can afford to pay that off. And you even do the math in your head, I can afford to pay that in 10, 12 years. That's no problem. And then when reality hits and you graduate your degree, you don't even go in the field most of the time that you did a degree on, and then you don't make the money that you were promised you'll make, then it's kind of like, all right, you got to do something for me now because I was lied to. Not even, and misled in some cases.
And these are,
a lot
of times, stuff that's private schools or SUNY colleges in which we pay them anyway through some of our...
But that still proves my point about the options, right? Forgiveness can look, there's many different flavors of forgiveness. It's like, what did the school do to contribute to the thing? How is the government going to, depending on your circumstances, forgive? Is it going to be the zero interest, or am I going to do zero interest plus you have a 101 match? Because you don't have to apply the 101 match to everybody. It's a zero interest.
Depending on the situation,
or maybe your school, maybe you shave 25% to give you the like, hey, you were misled. 25% straight off the bat. We're going to reduce it by 25%. Then we're going to match $1, or we're going to pay your zero interest. Stop thinking that there's only one way to solve it. It's a combination of
in my defense, in my happy world, it's completely forgiven, and they're giving me money on top. But in realistic world, those options would be ideal.
Because I want to win for everybody. That's what I'm looking for.
I see what you're saying. Where it's a little bit more realistic with some of those options.
Because you see what the government is right now. There is no way that Congress will, the way it's divided, they will. There's no way.
And
they gotta give him some money.
And a small pushback for Nelson. Like what's crazy is I almost like right there agree with you, but I just can't see myself like, it's not my job to hold someone accountable. Because I know you were saying like how these people are gonna learn to do this and how they're gonna learn to do that. You know, it's not my job for that person to learn and do that.
I agree, but
it's that person's job itself. So
it is. But
it's not the person. Like it's not the other person's job. It's just like almost reparations when they say if we give these people money, right? What are they gonna do with the money? They're not gonna know. That's not your job to figure out what they do with the money.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree, but
they can do whatever they want.
There's a distinct difference between the two. One is for former slave.
Yeah.
And then the other is a person who had the option. And I get it, you can be misled.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's different. Now, I don't care if the person learns or not. And maybe they actually pay that off their loans by matching, and then they go right back into another debt. I don't care. The reality is, think about it. Ultimately, you do pay. You're paying yourself too to pay off the loan.
And your heart is in the right place now. So let me just say, because he wants to help people. I get ultimately,
what's the most palatable thing that people will agree to? I'll give in a little, and you give in a little. That's basically that's the thing. Because the middle, right now, people are saying, "Well, I want 100%," and then other people are like, "Don't ever forgive." I'm like, we gotta do something.
There's a compromise somewhere.
Yeah.